Welcome to the most overrated, underappreciated, most viewed, underviewed podcast of all time. Welcome to the Prince of Fresh Air. I'm sorry, I know that was annoying. I hope I didn't hurt anybody's ears doing that. That was kind of sloppy, but I am the most charismatic man. We are back. I'm back in LA for the meantime a little bit in process of moving. So excuse the bed in the background. I'm just just trying to get myself together. Before I bring on Kyle, who's a returning guest. I got a couple announcements real quick. Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I've been hearing whispers. That you're trying to compete with me. You're the most electrifying man. I'm the most charismatic man. So I'm here to tell you, out with the old and with the new. That's right. And it also came to my attention. Tom Cruise. He emailed me last night asking me to do Mission Impossible. So we'll see about that. But I do have a couple announcements real quick. So I shot my episode number 5 for Jubilee Media is going to be out later this summer. I know a lot of people love when I appear on that YouTube channel, so check that out. And also, popular demand. People call me all the times and they, Zoe Saldana, Batista, asking me about, when you're gonna do YouTube. So you know what? I'm in the business of giving people what they want. So without further ado, I am going to be posting videos on YouTube now because I know a lot of people like YouTube. And I just want to share the charisma with everybody. So, whether you want to use YouTube, Spotify, whatever the case may be, the video will now be on YouTube. That's right. So, I won my $5,000 from YouTube immediately because, I am bringing the charismatic podcast on there. But nonetheless, let's get into the episode. Let's welcome the returning guest, the main man himself, Kyle Yates. Welcome back on, man.
Thank you. So my buddy Tarek was on your show the other day, and did he give you competition for that whole most charismatic man on the air?
Between me and you, no, you know what? We're in different lanes. That's all. He's very energetic. Like I said, he's like Chris Tucker. He's very
much.
energetic. He sounds like him too. He don't believe me, but I'm telling him. I'm sure when the episode comes out, people will be like, "Is that Chris Tucker on there?" But I do like him. He was great. I was supposed to have his brother come on with us. We was gonna have a threesome. Whoa. Let me not say that. But no, his brother's supposed to come on. He couldn't make it. So it was just us two, and it was a really good episode. I might do another one with them two back on because I know he wants his brother to share his journey as well, especially in comedy. So I'll probably get them on within the next couple weeks for sure. So, but he was good though. It was a really fun episode for sure.
Well,
And
you
yeah,
said Jamil's going to come on too.
yeah. Apparently, when right before we started, he texted Tarek and was like, "I'm stuck in traffic. It's going to be a minute." So we just did it without him. But yeah, I'm definitely going to have him come on. Because like I said, I'm trying to take the podcast in a different direction. Talking, for the longest I talked about, like I said, police brutality, murders, and all this other, the negative stuff in society. But as the most charismatic man, it's my duty to entertain people. So if you're driving on the highway, you're watching the kids, you're eating a cheeseburger in and out, you're picking up a pizza from Domino's, we are here to have fun. And that's why I brought you on, because we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna talk about a lot of stuff. But before we even get to the episode, how you been, man? How's life treating you?
Oh, well, it kicks me in the teeth a few times, but I keep going. I'm not going to let it keep me down.
I don't blame you. Don't let the hair fool you. I'm a hot mess sometimes too. My room right now, if I could pan the camera, y'all be disgusted with me. But it's because I'm moving right now. My landlord's selling my apartment, so I'm just in the middle of getting everything together. And then I'm going back to New York on Friday. So I'm looking forward to being back over there. But I do love the weather out here. I gotta say, the weather out here is unmatched. Have you been to LA before?
I the only time I've ever been to California, I was like 4 or 5 years old, so I don't even remember it. I do remember slightly when we went to San Diego because we went to the zoo and we did get to go to Disneyland. It's kind of a blur, You're talking almost 50 years ago. So.
Wow. I haven't been, you know what? That's one of my regrets living out here for like the last 3, 4 years. I didn't really travel much, and it's mostly just because I lived downtown. I didn't have a car. So most of my, besides auditioning, which I usually Uber for, I used to just, my gym where I used to go to work out and work at was like a 7 minute walk. So one of my regrets is not traveling enough because I hear a lot of good stuff about Disney. I haven't been to Disney yet, although I do know you need to take out a mortgage to go to Disney because it's not cheap anymore. Holy
Right.
crap. My you know what? My girlfriend's sister and her husband, they go to Disney like twice a year. I mean,
Wow.
when I found out how much they spend, I'm like, absolutely not. No, never, absolutely not.
Well,
But
next year, just ask them to buy me a new car. It'd be cheaper.
I need my, you know what? I'm in my 20s. I still haven't had my first car yet, but it's because I grew up in New York, public transportation. So that's on my bucket list is to get my first car. Uh, Hopefully I could do that before I'm 30. That would be perfect. But if not, it's all right.
I
Uh,
figured because you got limoed around everywhere.
Well, you know what? My security, they got lives, they got kids too, so it's hard. But I did tell Tom Holland that when I get my private jet next week, I'll let him ride. He'll pay me for it though, because inflation, gas ain't cheap. So
No kidding.
pay up, pal, pay up. Give me that Spider-Man money.
Right.
uh so let's get into the episode. You brought something to my attention.
Hmm.
Paranormal activity. Because I know I mentioned you do you're a paranormal investigator. And funny enough, when you texted me, I've been a big fan of Supernatural. I was literally watching Supernatural when you told me about it. And I've been a big fan of that show. And it's definitely, I'm not gonna lie, when I started watching this show when I was in high school, it really made me start to think about paranormal activity a little bit because when I was in college, there was my college St. Bonaventure University. There's like a tale of back in the 50s and 60s where someone like died in one of the student halls. It was called Dev, and I remember it's trippy, but I remember one time right before I graduated, I was walking. It had to have been like 12 in the morning. I was coming back from the Skella, which is like a nice little social area. And I remember looking up because the urban legend was on the fifth floor of the building. And I swore I saw a ghost up there. Now I know some people might say he's lying, he's capping a little bit, but I swore I saw a ghost up there. But before we get too much into it, I want you to, elaborate on that. So, how did you get into that, and how's that journey been for you?
Wow. Okay. Well, I've had a few experiences in my youth. The first one being when I stayed at my grandparents' house. There was one weekend where I'd woke up in the middle of the night and here's a figure standing in the doorway. I mean, it's illuminated, but it's not illuminated, if that makes sense. And it freaked me out. I kind of blew it off as maybe it was me just dreaming, but I vividly remember this figure. But that, even if that wasn't what I saw at my house, there was a shelf that I used to put these cars on. Now, if anybody knows me, I'm kind of OCD. Everything has to be in order. So all my vehicles had to be pointing the same direction. And there was only one car on that shelf that I made, and I made it in my grandpa's wood shop. And I would wake up in the morning and that car would be turned the opposite direction. And it happened time after time after time. I couldn't ever explain it. It doesn't sound scary, but I mean, it still kind of freaks you out. What did scare me is after I had moved out of the house, moved in with a friend of mine, and there's an area of town that is very historical. If you're familiar with the Battle of San Jacinto and where Santa Anna had surrendered. Well, anyway, it was really close to that area where I was living, and I had looked out of the window one evening and I saw somebody run across the yard, and so automatically we're like going after him. You know, you don't
Yeah.
want somebody breaking into your stuff, and it went to the fence and disappeared. Now, if somebody had jumped the fence, they would have had a long drop because there is uh, it's like a concrete waterway and it's very deep. So you jump off that, you're breaking a leg, no ifs, ands, or doubts about it. And also, I had woke up one night with the stereo coming on. Now, the stereo I had was one of those older models with the big old square button. You have to push it in to turn it on. So it's not going to be a power surge that makes this thing come on. But I mean, nobody else is in there to turn it on. How the heck did it get turned on? Well, that just kind of piqued my curiosity, and I kind of kept that to myself for years. And then you remember Ghost Hunters came on TV. I'm excited. I'm watching it, and I thought, man, that's what I want to do. And I said, one day I am going to meet those guys, and I'm going to investigate with them. Well, fast forward some years later, I got divorced and I was single for several years, and then I met my wife, who I have now, Michelle.
That's right.
And we'd met online. We had talked for a month or so, and finally decided we were going to go on a date. Anyway, the day we were going to go out, she texted me and she says, "Look, I have to cancel our date. Something came up. It's an emergency. I have to do this." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'm figuring, somebody's blown me off again, and my luck. But she kept texting me, and so finally I got the nerve to ask her, why did you cancel our date, but you're able to text me all night long? It took about 10-15 minutes, and she finally answered me. She says, "Well, I'm gonna have to tell you something. um I hope it doesn't break the deal, but I'm a paranormal investigator. We had an investigation come up. It was an emergency because there was a child involved. Child was getting hurt by a spirit, and so I had to go." I guess she expected me to think she was crazy and say, "I don't have nothing to do with you." But my next thing was, "Will you marry me now?" Anyway, to make a long story short, I ended up joining the team that she was on, and a year later, we did get married, and things didn't work out so well with that group, and we ended up starting our own group, and the rest is history.
Man, that's now you're married doing what you love, and you know, paranormal activity, like, it's a taboo thing. And I think, one of my first of all, I've always been fascinated with paranormal movies. Patrick Swayze Ghost, that was that's a classic. Everybody knows that one. But then you also have, Poltergeist. You have
Mm-hmm.
Paranormal Activity, the movies. And it's a huge thing. And I remember my earliest memory of this. I remember my mom used to tell me this when I was younger, about like 10, 11 years old, where I first grew up with her in Manhattan. She used to tell me about how she felt the presence of her mother who passed away in that house. And even my sister, she used to tell me that, like, they'd be sleeping in the living room, and all of a sudden, the toilet would flush. And things would just happen that had no explanation. It's like, I'm in the house by myself. Why is the lights flickering? Why is the toilet flushing? Why are things moving? And you know what? It was funny. One time I remember college, I came home for break, and I remember my dogs. I had two dogs, Neil and Lady. Shout out to them, love them. But I remember they used to always at night, usually around 1, 2 o'clock, they just sit and stare at the bathroom. Like they wouldn't move. They just stand there still. And I always thought
Mm-hmm.
it was weird. And my older brother used to say, "Yeah, this place is haunted." And I think he told me at one point he saw his grandmother, which is our grandmother, walking in the kitchen. And I know a lot of people think it's weird, they don't believe it. But I'm not gonna lie, I used to be a skeptic about it. I used to thought people was, just full of crap. And then, like I said, I had that experience at college where I remember I saw a figure. It was like I don't even remember how to describe it. It was dark, but I remember seeing like a man with a football jersey on. Because the urban legend was about a football player who died in the apartment that the school had. And I remember seeing that, and I never forgot that image. And I used to think maybe I was sleepy, maybe I had a little too much caffeine, I had a little much too alcohol, but I can't get that image out of my head. So for you, how was that journey? Meeting your wife and getting into it. What were you a little skeptic at first? Did it take you a while to warm up to it? When you started doing it, how was that for you?
Well, I'll tell you, I was very excited to get into it, and I've witnessed things that you have to be there, okay? But I do have some evidence, and I get excited about that. At the same time, I'm also a huge skeptic, meaning I can usually pinpoint what is causing whatever's happening to happen. But when you have video evidence and you have audio evidence, it's kind of hard to refute. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And we'll have investigations where you'll get some good evidence, and then you'll have those where it seems like nothing's happening. When you have those that seems like nothing's going on, you start to kind of question yourself and say, is this real? Did I experience it? And then something happens and and you can't refute it. Then all of a sudden excitement comes back.
interesting. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I will say, watching Supernatural, I know it's cheesy. I know it's cheesy, but Supernatural has made me, anybody who hasn't watched it, Jensen Ackles, Jared Padalecki, great show, 15 seasons. And they deal, especially the earlier seasons, they used to deal with that type of stuff, Ghost, and they used to talk about how, like, a lot of times they were holding on to something specific, or they just never went to the afterlife. And everybody's gonna have different opinions on that, but you know what, I do think, when I started reading, so part of acting for me is I like to read about productions. So when they shoot in these type of movies, all types of movies, but especially paranormal ones, I read a lot of them, and I think, was it a medieval horror based off a true story, if I'm not mistaken?
It is based off a true story, but it's not exactly what you see in the movies.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they amped it up, but
Yeah, of course.
I think I think it is true. I've heard so many stories of people saying, like, they've seen things, they've heard a relative in the house, they've seen the figure walking. And it's kind of taboo because a lot of people think it's, it's baloney, that's not the
Mhm.
Ghostbusters, right? But
Right.
I do think some of it is true. And I think a lot of it was, like I said, watching Supernatural and seeing how they did it. Now, granted, it's a TV show. It's going to be a
Yeah.
little more campy and hammed up. But I do think there is a thing now. We hear about haunted houses. People moving into houses that people died in, and unexplained things are happening. And a lot of these movies, some of them not, but a lot of them are based off some type of significant thing that happened that was true. So just tell me a little bit, because I'm actually not too familiar with that type of line of work. So what would a typical day for you be like, when you're out in the field and doing that type of thing?
Well, when we first get there, we of course will go around the house and we'll check things like exposed wiring because that'll put off. that electromagnetic field, and some people are very sensitive to it.
Right.
Um, there's all kinds of things just kind of look for that may be out of place. Another thing we'll do is I will have an EMF detector, and I go along and I try to see if there's any hot spots in the house. Sometimes that will affect your equipment. One thing we found out that those night vision cameras, if you walk in front of them, it'll set your EMF detector off. Um, Sometimes if you've got too much equipment, electronic equipment in one area, it'll set it off. I've gone up in some houses in their attics. Like there was a place I think it was in Baytown, Texas. It was that old wiring that had the cloth covering on it,
Mm-hmm.
and this, you're talking, that was probably 1930s, you know, and they'd actually cut some of that out of the way, and somebody had wrapped wire around it to a light and was using that to light up the attic. Well, I mean, you got crazy EMF coming off of that. So if you get a pretty good baseline of the house, you know where the hot spots are, you kind of know where to avoid. And then we'll ask people, where's the most activity going on, that kind of thing. And so we'll set cameras in that area to try to catch whatever's going on. I mean, little things like that. Get a history of the house. We have a guy who actually knows how to research homes. Who's owned it, if there's anything significant that's happened there, whether it be somebody died or a murder, something along that line. And we also use a psychic medium. I have one specifically with our team, but I have brought some from the outside to get a feel for the place, and they are very, very helpful. Now, I used to be very skeptical about mediums. I didn't believe in that stuff. I thought a bunch of malarkey, some kind of parlor trick, until I met the one that works with us. When you hear people say they tell you stuff that there's no way they could have known, this lady, first time I ever met her, she was telling us specific things there's no way she could have known. And it's she's made me a believer. She'll go in, and I'll give you a quick example. And there was a house that she said that she was getting a person coming through, that she was an aunt type figure, that she had been kind of excommunicated from the family, and she had had a child out of wedlock, and the child was killed, and just giving all this detail. Well, the lady that lived there, she goes, no, nothing like that. There's no one in our family like that. Well, a few days after the investigation, she called me and she said, I talked to my mother, and I didn't know that she had a sister who used to party and run around and sleep with men, and the family didn't want to have anything to do with her anymore. And she had a child out of wedlock, and the child had been neglected to the point it passed away. And I was like, oh my God, how do you get that specific of details when even the owner of the house didn't even know that? You know? So you've got all these different factors that come in, and I'll try to I don't want to say provoke, but what's the word I'm looking for? I'll try to do something to have the spirit react. Okay. I don't provoke a spirit because that is disrespectful to me. I mean, this person's already died and trapped here. Why would you further aggravate them? You wouldn't want that somebody doing that to you.
I'm curious. I don't mean to cut you up. So
No, sure.
how do you antagonize or poke a spirit.
Well, if you've ever watched Ghost Adventures,
I have watched
well,
a episode or two. Yeah.
they used to go in and they'll say, hey, you think you're so tough, come and hit me. You hit women and stuff like that. You come hit me, or you just they do crazy stuff like that. Act like they're real tough and they're not scared, and oh, you have no power here. You can't do anything to me, and just trying to aggravate them. And I just feel that's disrespectful.
Yeah, I agree. It's fascinating, this type of stuff. It's something that, it's still a little taboo in a sense, but I do think we're moving into a society now where people are willing to embrace certain things and talk about certain things. Do you think this is something that, people are really starting to acknowledge? Because for the longest, a lot of people used to think, it's a load of crap, especially mediums. Now, as someone who's did magic and stuff like that, I do know there's some of them that just in it for cash, but I do
Of
think there are
course.
some genuine ones, and I think sometimes you see people who are only doing this type of stuff, what you're doing, or psychics who are just doing it for cash, and they don't really care about it, and it ruins it for the true believers. Do you think
Mhm.
it's becoming more accepted in society, like to talk about this stuff and really seek out advice? Because how do people find you to go in their house or their apartment and do this type of thing? Because I'm curious. I never met someone who does it before.
Well, as far as people asking us, they will either find us on social media or word of mouth. Uh, um, and as far as it being accepted, I believe there's going to be a day where it's going to be taught in school and in colleges. And the reason why I say that is I used to interview just about all of them that you've seen on television, ghost hunters, dead files, those kind of folks. And I got to be friends with Mustafa Gadalori, who he came in the second iteration of the Ghost Hunters, and him and Brandon Alvis, they've got a show that's going to be coming out soon. But Brandon is probably the most scientific person I've ever met as far as this stuff goes. And what they do is they've got this equipment. It's based on photon technology, where you get a more finer picture of what's out there using photons. And this is something that you can't refute. There's nothing that's going to make this machine do something different. Or you can make an EMF detector go off easily by uh, flipping the switch on a walkie talkie or your cell phone going off, but this equipment's not going to do that. So when you see the stuff that they do, it's going to make you believe that it's going to become a part of science. It's not going to be a taboo thing anymore. It's gotten to where I think a lot of people are getting bored with it because there's so much out there. I mean, every time you turn around, there's a new TV show with a bunch of paranormal investigators, and everybody and their brother goes and gets a EMF detector and a camera, and they're ghost hunters, you know. It, it- and I think a lot of people do hurt what we're trying to do. I think Ghost Adventurers, as much as I know a lot of people love them guys, I think shows like that actually hurt what we're doing, because a lot of the stuff they do is fake. Okay. They've got some producer in the next room who's knocking on the wall or throwing something across the room. I'm
Right.
sorry, but every investigation that you go to is not going to have 200 hours of all this great evidence. It's just not going to happen. I can't tell you how many hours I've sit there in the dark and not a thing happens. I I mean, it's seldom that you get something really good. In fact, when you go to my social media, you won't find a lot of evidence on there because I am that critical of the things that we find. If I have a doubt, I'm not going to put it out there. And even the stuff that I do, I'll ask people, "Hey, have you experienced this? What do you think it is? Do you have an explanation for this?" If I can tell you about the first team that I was with, we went to a part of Texas. It's pretty historical. It's Spring, Texas. It's going to be north of Houston. And there was a house that we went to. The medium that went there found out that there was a little girl that was on the property. Her name was Farmer. And further research, we found out that there was a girl who had been quote unquote adopted because it wasn't a legal thing to do back then, but the family had farm workers there who were black, and this little girl was white. Her parents had passed away, and this black family had adopted her and taken her into their home. And Farmer liked to do all kinds of stuff around the house. And then when me and my buddy Rodney were on the second floor, all the ladies were downstairs watching the video of us doing our little investigation. We sat down in this room, and I tell you what, I've had problems with my feet before, but I felt like my foot was on fire. I didn't think of anything of it. I just thought it was me. And you can refute this. That's fine. I'm not saying this is concrete evidence, but when I told the ladies that, they all started giggling. And I'm like, what's so funny? And they said, oh, we saw you there sitting in the dark barefooted, and we told Farmer to go tickle your feet. And at that time, that's when it happened. Well, I ended up in this one room by myself, and I didn't notice anything while I was up there, but the ladies saw something fly around me and disappear. I swore up and down it was a bug, but when we watched the video, there was another lady who was videoing that video with her cell phone, and at the point where this thing flew behind me, her phone picked up a voice that said, "That was me." And I've got a copy of that on my channel, by the way, if anybody wants to check it out. Yeah. Shameless plug there.
I saw that.
And there was, when I was on my own, or me and Michelle were on our own, we were at a house, and I'd set up in this one room, and what looked like a bug to me flew into my chest and out of my back. And you can see that on the video. There was no audio to that. I wished I had audio at that time, but the medium told me that a fairy seems to follow me everywhere I go. Whenever I do these investigations, like a guardian angel type character for me. Now, to me, that's like, oh, whatever. I don't believe in all that stuff, but it showed up several times. I wished I had more of those videos of these things flying around me, but it's crazy. Now, if somebody can tell me what else it could be, I'm up for it. I'm not going to debate you on it. I'm just saying, hey, this is unusual activity. I can't explain it. If you can, please tell me. So, whew, did I get all that out?
You did get it all out. And this is a conversation, that I was interested and intrigued by, because like I said, it is still taboo. But you know what? But before we continue, because we got a lot more stuff coming at your way, We're going to take just a little short break, bring in our sponsors, and we'll be right back with my man Kyle Yates.